So let's see if we can get an image here. Next step.
Apparently that did work.
Okay, and we do have an image. Fantastic. So I thought I'd get on for a little while tonight. It's been a while. And frankly, I've been really busy imaging the Elephant Trunk Nebula for the last, really for the last week, doing longer exposures and actually doing 3-minute exposures and 20 at a time. So right now I've got about 3 hours worth of data. My goal at the end is to get about 6 to 7 hours worth of data. The weather for the next few nights doesn't look very promising for that, so I thought I'd pop on for just a little while tonight and do a few targets. Right now we're looking at the Dumbbell Nebula, which is M27. It you can see it here as a bit of a close-up. I did a quick 2-minute exposure on it just to let you have a look at that, and I'll darken it up a bit here. Probably that's too much histogram. Not too bad. So you can see the star at the center of this, which is actually pretty neat. This is basically a white dwarf, and as a result, this is actually the shell of that star after it has shedded itself, and that's slowly expanding outwards, and you're looking at the result of a basically dying star. The star is pretty much dead. It's a white dwarf now, and it is just, this is the remnant of what's left of it. So we're going to do a little longer exposure on this one just to see if we can get a little more detail. Let's do a 3-minute exposure if you'll put up with that. Some good news. It looks like the 14-inch telescope will be back maybe late September. I'll be happy to have that back. At that point, I'll be able to have actually 2 different telescopes running. The smaller 8-inch RASA that's in the observatory now will be just outside the observatory on targets, and then the big telescope inside. The RASA is really a wide field telescope, which is great for these types of images. It is able to capture a lot more area than the 14-inch with the hyperstar on it, which the RASA is about a 400 millimeter telescope, and the 14-inch with the hyperstar attachment at the front of it brings it down from a 3500 millimeter telescope focal length down to about 600, so you get a lot tighter imaging, so more close-up. If I take that hyperstar off and put the camera in the back, then you get even closer, obviously, with the big aperture and focal ratio of that telescope. So yeah, this is kind of a grainy image because obviously it's just one frame. In astrophotography, you take many frames, shots of the same object, stack them all together, and it cancels out a lot of that noise you see in the background. You do some processing on it and make it look pretty. Right now, the imaging is being done with my ASI 2600 one-shot color. It has an H-alpha filter on it, so it brings out the hydrogen, and you can see some hydrogen, a little bit of H-beta in there, a little bit of oxygen. There are other filters you can put on there that bring out sulfur. Sulfur is always very weak, so I've never really imaged with sulfur filters. A lot of people do. You can kind of fake it out in PixInsight and do what's called a Hubble palette image. And I did do one of those the other day. I've never done one before, so I just thought I'd start and try. And we're coming up on just a few seconds here. Let's see what this one looks like. We'll probably have to adjust the histogram because it's a longer exposure. And let's see what this one looks like. So yeah, this is far from a final image. I would take probably several hours worth of images, stack them all together. It's a little brighter. Let's move the histogram down a bit. The danger with longer exposures on some of these targets is you can blow them out. And the Orion Nebula is a prime example of that. Where you actually, it's too bright, too long at image, or too long at exposure, I should say, and you'll end up blowing the image out. So yeah, this is M27, which stands for Messier Object 27. It's called the Dumbbell Nebula. You can kind of see why. It looks a little bit like a dumbbell, and really a great object to photograph. And I do plan on going back to this object probably in the next few weeks after I get as much data as I can on the Elephant Trunk Nebula. And once I get that done and processed, I'll post that on my Facebook page, which is the Brampton Observatory page on Facebook, and let you have a look at it. I may even actually do a Hubble palette on it just to see what it looks like. As I say, I just started working on that, and I'll do a video sometime on what a Hubble palette is. If you've looked at the Hubble images, which are spectacular, they're what are called false color images. So they're not the real colors. Well, kind of they are, but they aren't, of the actual object if you were to look at it in space. But it does make the images look pretty spectacular. This is not a false color image. You can see the H alpha in here coming out nicely and along the edges here, and a lot more definition with the longer exposure. If you were to do much more than this, probably could get away with a 5-minute exposure. This is a 3-minute exposure, but anything more than that, for those who are just getting started. A lot of people are just starting now to experiment with very short exposures, like 10-15 second exposures, and just taking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those, stacking them together. I haven't really tried that yet. I'm thinking of giving it a whirl. Maybe I'll do it with this target with M27 and see how it comes out. But you can see some pretty spectacular coloring in here just for one 3-minute exposure. New things on the Rasa telescope is I've now got the guide scope back on, which is when I dropped the telescope. I'm not going to get into that because that was one of my dumber moments in history. Fortunately, no damage to the telescope that I could see. I've been imaging with it now for more than a week or so, and everything seems to be okay. The guide camera is what you see right up here. There's another camera on top of the telescope that's sending a signal to the mount to correct for any errors in tracking the object. I am getting, with longer exposures, a little bit of eggy stars, so sort of eccentric egg-shaped stars in some of the images. And that may not be due to, well, it could be due to a couple of things. It could be due to the filter not being accurate. It could be due to what's called flexure, which you have a big heavy camera at the front of the telescope, and any little bit of an angle that you tilt a bit, it will cause those stars to look eccentric. my polar alignment is really pretty good, so I don't think that's the cause of it, because I've gone back and adjusted that. I do a polar alignment fairly regularly, even though I'm in an observatory. I'm on a big giant steel pier, which is, goes, the cement block that it's bolted to goes 3 feet into the ground, so that there's no vibration or anything from wind and that kind of thing. I'm fairly sheltered. There's no wind tonight. Actually, I wasn't even expecting to be able to image tonight. Can see that my guiding here, this number, is a little higher than normal, and it seems to happen when the telescope is higher up, pointing higher into the sky towards the zenith, which is the highest point in the sky. Which, still guiding wise, it's not horrible. Earlier I was down in the 50.50 instead of 1.2 here. You can see there's a bit of error in the right ascension, the RA, and the declination. Every once in a while you get this little spike, so it went up a bit here. That's something, if you do get into astrophotography, there's a lot of opinions out there now whether guiding is here to stay. If you take really short exposures, then guiding really doesn't become an issue. It really is only an issue if you're doing longer exposures, like 3 minutes, 5 minutes. There are people out there who actually do 10-minute exposures, and probably some that do even longer on one object. I typically, 3 minutes is about where I find my limit right now with this particular mount. It's an older mount. It's a Celestron CG Pro. It's been through many a winter and probably needs some fine tuning, and I may actually do that this year and bite the bullet and take it down to KW Telescope in Kitchener and let him do some work on it. I'm not contemplating right now buying a new mount. I'd love to buy something else that's more accurate, but again, cost effective wise right now, that's not a reality. I can take a look at. Some of the mounts are, the one that I would like to get, it would probably be $8,000 to $10,000, and that's just way over my budget at this point. I do ask people, if you are watching this, even though there's probably nobody online watching it, because I didn't announce it or anything like that. I don't see anyone in the live chat there or anything. Please subscribe to the channel. It will help to keep us going here, and hit notifications so that you know when we are live. And hopefully we'll see you more often, and do this as much as we possibly can. There's the nights are getting shorter now, or well, the nights are getting longer, I should say. The days are getting shorter as we're moving into towards fall, in that dreaded word, winter, here in Canada anyway. That's just the nature of the beast. Fortunately, again, I am in the observatory, and tonight it's actually 80 degrees inside the control room. It has gone up to 99 degrees at times, but I just put a new fan in, but I've turned that off tonight because I know it's going to make just a crap load of noise in the background. So anyway, that is M27, Messier 27, also known as the Dumbbell Nebula. There's a kind of a big screen. You can see a massive star field in the background, and it's a very nice object to photograph. And if I were to use the 14-inch with the Hyperstar, it would be even a bigger close-up than this. This is actually, the image itself is quite massive that this camera produces, so it would look good if I were to have it full screen and at its actual zoom rate, which is really, this is not full screen. This would be worthy of printing out if I did it again. A bunch of whoops, there my guiding really jumped there up to 306. I'm not sure why that's happening, but again, I'm not actually imaging at this point for stacking. This is just to show you guys some stuff in the night sky and get back on, because I kind of missed getting on. Anyway, let's have a look at another target that's kind of prevalent in the night sky right now. There's a bunch of them up here in the Big W, as they call it, or Cassiopeia, or Cassiopeia, depends on how you want to pronounce it. There's the Heart and Soul Nebula and a few others you can actually see up here right now. M31, that's the Andromeda Galaxy, which is already interacting with our galaxy. A lot of scientists believe the outer gases of this galaxy is already connected with the outer gases of our galaxy. One day the two of them will actually collide, and well, we won't be here to see that day, but what a spectacular sight it would be to see that galaxy like 100 times closer than it is now, although the end result may not be good for any life in either galaxy. All kinds of strange things can happen when galaxies collide. Though stars likely will never collide because of the distance is so far apart. It is unlikely that stars would collide, but planets could be gravitationally affected and get tossed out of their systems, and who knows what will happen. It's basically like a train wreck. Our galaxy has collided with many other galaxies over a millennium of time, and there are remnants of that there already, like the Large and Small Magellanic Clouds are remnants of galaxies that we've collided with. Recently, scientists, astronomers have found an arc that goes over the top and through our galaxy that they believe is also the result of one of these collisions many billions of years ago. So other things that are in the night sky we may take a look at some point. There you can see Jupiter is rising here in the east right now. It's way too low for me to look. I'd be looking smack into my house, which I cut off here so I can just see what's coming up in the image. Some things over here, M8, which is a nice nebula I wish I could get, but there's a big street light right here, and M8 is really low, so it would just be a disaster trying to get anywhere near that. You could see Pluto, again, way too low for my vantage point. But the one we do want to look at is the North American Nebula, which is really a cool nebula, especially when you're looking at it wide field. And it is known as NGC 7000, and NGC just stands for New Galactic Catalog. And we're going to switch over to that right now. You can see it's actually very high up in the sky right now. This basically tells you how many degrees it is in altitude and the time. So where it is at midnight, as we're approaching midnight, it's actually quite high, and it'll go down and be pretty well setting by 6 a.m. this morning. So let's have a look at the nebula. We'll just go over to that. Of course, the first image that it always takes, it is very high up. The first image that it takes will be not so good because it's just aligning. It's doing what's called plate solving. It's going out there and using the software to detect where it is in the sky when it takes a small image, and it'll correct for any drift or any misalignment and center the actual target, which is handy. I'm using the ASI Air Pro, which is a little box that basically is a Raspberry Pi box for those who are in the know about computers. And it has all the software up. You can see that went wacko. Built into it, which I'm using right now. Although I'm using it through another piece of software because it's an Android software. But I'm using an Android emulator. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here. So we're going to let the mount settle for a moment while the guiding goes back. It's still off quite a bit, but we're going to do a 3-minute exposure. Whoops, my automatic lights are going off, so it's getting darker in here. These lights have timers. Whoops, it's gone dark. There we go. Sorry about that. So we'll do a 3-minute exposure on the North American, and you'll see why it's called the North American Nebula. Well, obviously, the answer to that question is it looks a little bit like the continent of North America. So because of the way the telescope works, it'll look actually kind of upside down to you, but if you look at it when it comes through, and I'll let you know when that happens, you'll see it. And hopefully it will be a decent image. The moon hasn't risen yet, and that also is a major factor, although I'm imaging in what's called narrowband. So the filter takes out some of that moonlight, but the filter I'm using, actually, there's another one called the L Extreme. I'm using the L Enhance because it allows a little more of the other elements to show, whereas the L Enhance, or I'm sorry, the L Extreme narrows that down even further, so it's better for light pollution, but it doesn't give you as many of the elements that make the picture stand out and all the different colors that you might see in it. So we got about 78 seconds. Guiding is getting a little better. It must be a balance issue, I think, on the telescope. That's why my guiding goes off. Although it is coming down now. It's 0.82, which is not horrible either. You can see occasional spikes. Definitely, I think this mount has to go in for a tune-up. It has been extensively used in all kinds of weather, including outside before I had the observatory, and I think it's finally in need of probably some belt adjustments or even belt replacements. So we'll get that done hopefully before winter observing season, where there's a lot more in the sky from my vantage point that I can get anyway. Some things higher. Orion will start to come back again, and I really want to do Orion some justice this year. I did image Orion last year, but I was really not happy with the result. Got a lot, blew out the core completely, and got a lot of halo on some of the brighter stars. So here we go, and with any luck, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to kill the histogram here for a minute. So you can see it's kind of looking a little backwards. This is where I'm showing now why, again, it's called the North American Nebula, although it's kind of flipped the wrong way. You could see here would be down around the Gulf of Mexico, Texas, Baja California, up into Canada and Alaska, the continental United States, kind of. You know, you get the idea, right? It's beautiful nebula to look at. It's really very large and sits quite high in the sky this time of year. And actually in the winter, it's a good winter target as well. And it's just fun to shoot, and I will be doing this one, hopefully, some justice this year as well, and process it. And again, this is one I may try after I do the initial processing to, oh, my guiding has come way down. That's great, 0.51. Try to process it as a Hubble palette image. And actually, let me show you what a Hubble palette image looks like. No, I can't do it on this one. Unfortunately, with this on, it'll mess it up. Anyway, I will show that next time. I'll make sure I have it on my desktop so I can just bring it up and show you what a Hubble palette, the difference looks like when you colorize it. But if you look at a Hubble image, it has a very specific look of colors, and that's what you can do in processing. It involves basically splitting the RGB channels, separating those out, and renaming them, and doing a little bit of cosmetic work on it. You remove all the stars from the background that you see here. And anyway, it's a bit of a longer process, but it does give you a slightly different look than the hydrogen alpha that we're looking at right now. And you can see some depth in there if we scan around it a bit. Some of the gaseous look here. Let's turn the histogram on again. Let's bring that a little darker. That may be too much. A little bit too much. Bring that back a bit. And let's kill the histogram and zoom in. And you can start to see, even with this one frame, some really nice structure in here, in this area, right? Of the hydrogen alpha, or the hydrogen gas, I should say. And you can start to see some depth in there and structure, which again in the final process you would have many images, hours worth of data stacked together, one on top of the other, which cancels again all of that noise and signal garbage that you would see in a single image like this. Actually, I'm not too unhappy with my stars here, considering that my guiding is a little off. I still get those. You can see a little bit of an egg shape. You can correct this in PixInsight, which is the processing software I use primarily, by using what's called deconvolution settings, and kind of make the stars a little more round. And or you could actually replace all the stars in the background. That's a whole other process. So yeah, that's the North American. Up here also, we looks like, yeah, there you can see it a bit. Again, with one single 3-minute image, you're not going to see it as well as you would with multiple images stacked. But you can see again some structure here in the hydrogen gas, which is pretty neat. And when all the images, you were to take, say, 4 or 5 hours of images or more of this, you'd really see that dark structure stand out and the gas stand out. So yeah, that's the North American. This is another part of that complex of nebula over here. And again, you can see every one of those small dots is a star for the most part, and it's just spectacular to think how many stars this camera can see in the night sky that we can't see because of light pollution in our skies. And of course, some of them you wouldn't be able to see obviously anyway because they're far too dim. It does require that specialized astro camera to pick those up. So let's have another look while we're here for a little while longer. I'm not sure if I can get this or not. My neighbor's tree is kind of in that area, although it's fairly high up. Let's have a look. This is the Heart and Soul Nebula, which are really great too. I did image one. Actually, if you look at this, this is in part a Hubble palette image. I'll zoom really into that. This is the Heart Nebula. It's kind of upside down because that's the way it is, but in the software. But you might be able to get like a tinge of bluish color out here in the Hubble, but this is kind of that Hubble look that you would see rather than the reddish H alpha, and that's what I would be processing. So you can see this is IC 1305, I think, if memory serves. Yeah, IC 1305. So let's, you know what, let's give it the old college try and try to get that one in there. IC 1305. Yeah, it's already reached its peak, so it is starting to set as we're around midnight here in my location. So let's go to and have a look and see what we can get. I've actually never done a 3-minute image of this before, so I'll be kind of curious myself. Yeah, the telescope's swinging way around to get this one. Hopefully we won't run into a tree in terms of visual. I'm just looking out. Might be okay. We'll see what happens. We'll see, let it try to target. One thing with this software is if it can't pick up the target, it'll just keep looping, and then you know you're in a tree or some obstruction. So it did pick up 1700 plus stars, so now it's auto centering to put the target in the center of the frame. And with any luck, we won't see much here, I don't think, with the short exposure. Oh, well, let's see. Yeah, let's do a histogram on that. And that's because of the shorter length, so the histogram here just defaulted to what it was for the other image. So we can change that quickly. And I think we will not know until we do an actual, let's do 3 minutes. Actually, we'll do 3 minutes. So let's dump the histogram here so we can see it when it comes through. It's really a great target. It's very visually stunning to look at. You can see a lot of structure here in the nebula itself, and a lot of dark areas which really stand out if you do a lot of data on a target like this. It's really beautiful to look at. And this one is the Soul Nebula, so I'm not sure we'll have, we should actually have those two in the image. We can actually see that because there's a new add-on for this software in the newest version, which is a planetarium software. And interestingly enough, I am a little confused here. It is not showing that I'm on target. Well, we'll find out momentarily what's going on with that, if we are on target or not, in about 82 seconds. Again, with a frame like this is just a short 10 seconds, and 10 seconds is nowhere near enough to bring out any kind of detail on anything. So let's look for another target while we're playing with that. I did type in the right number, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I see 1305. My guiding is kind of really spiky here in the right ascension. In RA, deck is not too bad, which is really kind of more important in one way, but ideally you'd like to have these very flat, not so many peaks, which is definitely probably an issue with the mount. So, however, let's have a look here. We got about 3 seconds for this image to pop up, and hopefully we have the Heart Nebula in the center. We'll know briefly. Wow, okay, well, that's a little strange. I'm going to have a quick look outside and see where the telescope is. It may be in the wrong spot. Hang on. Okay, well, interestingly enough, it is not pointing in the right direction, which is odd. Let's have a look here and see exactly where we have gone wrong. It's actually, for some reason or other, pointing in the opposite side of the sky. So it did do a refocus just before I came here. So let me try something else here. Sometimes stuff gets weird. Welcome to astronomy. Okay, well, it doesn't know it by that name. Okay, well, let's, just for giggles here, I know it's not going to work well because I don't think Andromeda is, yeah, it's right on the edge of visual, and I know it's going to be in that tree that's next door to me, so that's probably not going to work as a target. Cancel that. And what else have we got here that might be doable? Bear with me, friends. Yeah, that went to completely opposite side of the sky. I'm so confused by that. Let's find another target. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go back to the North American just for a second to see if it's what might be going on. Let's see if it can find it. If not, I may have to restart this telescope. And if that happens, we'll probably call it a night here, which I'm going to do anyway very shortly. However, we'll give it a try and see what happens. In the meantime, I'm going to where are we here? No, that's it. There we go. Let's just cook it up. Duh. Okay, I see what I did. Sometimes the brain does not function. Okay, so we're going to try that yet again. I don't know why I had IC 1305 in my head. It's actually IC 1805. There we go. I should have known better. We'll see what happens here. Hopefully, sometimes it's not your equipment, sometimes it's just you. Get used to that if you get into astronomy. You'll say, oh, it's my equipment, I don't know why this isn't working or that isn't working. And it turns out it's just you. Even experts make these mistakes, myself included. So just keep that in mind. If you have one of those days where nothing is going right and you start to get frustrated, it may be time to call it a day. But we're not frustrated yet. So there you have it. Okay, that's kind of what I thought. It's sitting in a tree, literally. This is the shadow of my neighbor's tree. He did thankfully take one tree down, which now allows me to do a better polar alignment, or a good polar alignment actually. However, there is one massive tree that seems to be growing exponentially every year in the center of his yard that kind of blocks anything low in the sky over here. So that tree is located literally, well, you can see this is a very old picture I took years and years ago. So you can see that tree actually wasn't that high, but now it is clearly quite high, as it's blocking our view. Later on in the year, this will be definitely more in the east and higher in the sky. So we will get images of that at that point, but not this day. What else have we got here today that we can have a quick look at? And up in the summer triangle, anything up there of any interest right now? There are some clusters of stars up there. Clusters, I find clusters of stars and globular clusters quite interesting. Speaking of which, let's take a look at M13 and see where you are. I find them quite interesting. One of the most beautiful clusters to look at in the night sky visually is the double cluster. I remember seeing it when I was very young for the first time and was like, wow, I mean, that's just beautiful to look at. M13 may work. Let's give it a whirl here. It is in the western sky, but I think it is I think we have enough clearance. Let's see. Do I have M13 on here? No, I don't. And M13 is a globular or globular, depending, it is setting, cluster. This may be very close. We'll see. Globular cluster of several hundreds of thousands of stars. If you were to live inside this cluster, well, you'd probably die of radiation because their stars are so close together that it's unlikely, they believe, that life could exist in one of these clusters in any system of star or stars. But there's so much we don't know, and that's the great thing about science and astronomy and cosmology and physics. We learn something new all the time. Just when we thought we had it figured out, we figure that we didn't have it figured out. So that's always interesting. Well, let's see. It says the target's centered. Let's see if the house is blocking us on the backside. No, it is not. So let's do, just for the fun of it, this is very bright. 3 minutes is probably quite long for this type of object. However, we've got time, so let's give it a whirl. So that's what it looks like. Again, this is just a very short exposure, 10 seconds. This object actually, even in fairly light polluted skies, is visible through binoculars or a small telescope. It's one of the Messier objects, M13, M standing for Messier. And these clusters actually orbit just outside of the Milky Way, our galaxy. So they are kind of fun to look at. And we got some bright stars in there as well. So let's let this run its course. We probably have to adjust the histogram a little bit on this. Once it does its thing. While we're waiting for that, I'm using a program, by the way, called Starry Night Pro. It's a great planetarium program. There are free ones out there I've mentioned before, like Stellarium, which is really great. You can control your telescope with it as well. I'm using the ASI Air, so I don't need to control my telescope through this software. But for finding objects and their relation to where they are in the sky and where they are in relation to what I am able to see from my vantage point in the observatory with the houses and the trees that are around me, it's very helpful. This one is not cheap. It's a couple of $100 to buy, but it does have all kinds of great features and functions. And there's actually a fellow down in the US that does EAA astronomy, and he has a YouTube channel, and he goes through a lot of the functionality of this program. And it really does have a huge amount of functionality that, frankly, I don't really use that much. Other than I do enjoy it. This is, you can create a panorama with your own house. You can see in the panorama. I did cut these off. I'm going to do a new one now that the observatory is here, and I'm going to leave all these houses uncut. This tree and this shed is long gone from the picture. This tree is now part of, well, this is all part of my wife's garden. This grass is gone. This is gone. This walkway, and the observatory is literally sitting somewhere along here to the back. And then my wife has her garden along the fence here, all through here, and through here. which was the compromise for me building at observatory, so I don't say too much about her garden, other than it's rather full. And if she ever watches this, she'd kill me for saying that. However, yeah, that's too bad that we couldn't get that. That's unfortunate. And M82, which is a galaxy, I don't think that's visible to us now either. Again, until winter. It'll be back in the winter time. I think it's too low behind the house in the northwest here to really do anything with. Yeah, it's way low, so you could see here this house would be top here. I did image it earlier in the summer. Oh, my lights are starting to go bye-bye again. These have a timer on them. I'm going to have to figure out the timer on these guys. So it might go dark here for a second. Oh, there we go. So one thing I didn't know is they had a timer, though they come with a remote, so that's kind of cool. I didn't even know it had a remote till I looked in the box after. Oh, there we go. They're going to start to time out one by one here. There we go. So yeah, M82 is a wee bit on the low side. We're not going to get that in here. This is the California Nebula. That's, again, way too low. Some of these will be higher in the sky earlier in the morning, you know, when we get into 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. I am not staying up that late today. I am going to do some cleaning in the observatory tomorrow and a few adjustments and a few tests on some other things. I would image Saturn, but it's way too low right now as well. All of these that rise in the east and cross through the southeast, like we have a big alignment here. We have Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn, Pluto. We had a bigger alignment there a little while ago. This is the Milky Way, where it would be. If we could see it, you would be pretty spectacular, but in light polluted skies, that is very unlikely. We do have M17 over here. Not sure how much we would be able to get of that. Again, it's higher in the sky, but that light, you can't see the actual light on this image, the photo I took, but there's a very bright street light over here, and that may well kill it. But maybe we'll try to have a look and see. So that image came through. That actually not too bad. Let's give it a little more histogram. The other thing that we battled these days doing astro imaging is satellites crossing through your image. And of course Elon Musk's constellation satellites, where you'll have just a streak line of satellites going through your image. Sometimes you have to pause it, or you'll lose 3 or 4 different images and data because that is going through. There's a lot of debate in the field over the usefulness of his satellites and how it's affecting astro imaging and science in general, with all these objects going through the sky and people trying to do science from these images, very serious science in some cases. All right, let's zoom in on this. So there you see, it's a little bit on the blurry side here, but kind of nice to look at. That's a more sensible. The zoom always pixelates anyway. It's not a natural size for the image. It's just to kind of show you guys close up, and it is one frame. The guiding was a little wacky during that too, so we got a little off. Plus the seeing in the sky tonight is not great. The transparency is not too bad, but I know we do have clouds moving in. It's supposed to rain tomorrow, so probably getting a lot of that thin high cloud, which is maybe distorting this a little bit. But yeah, so that's a globular cluster orbiting outside our galaxy. They're visually great to look at as well. You can look at them, like I say, even binoculars. I always tell people, if you're thinking of what to buy to start out in astronomy before you get into the money pit, basically, of buying a lot of expensive astronomy gear, buy a really good set of binoculars and use those. A lot of these targets are viewable visually through a decent set of binoculars. So you don't have to go out and spend, thousands of dollars on a telescope. Just an option. There are other telescopes out there, smaller ones. I always find that people buy telescopes and then they're kind of disappointed when they look through them. I mean, some of the planets obviously are pretty spectacular to look at. Certainly Saturn with its rings. Jupiter, if you use a Barlow lens, which is just a magnifier lens on the back of your telescope, it's pretty spectacular to look at as well. And I don't know. Maybe we may be able to get the Eagle Nebula here. Let's see. I hate the writing on these things. Yeah, M16, I believe. Okay, we're going to try for M16, and M16 will look pretty familiar to some of you. So let's get off that one. And if you ever have any questions, you can go to my Facebook page and send me a message or an email. My email is on there, or it should be, last time I checked anyway. M16 is probably too low. We'll see. It is... Before we do that, let's look again and compare. Sometimes these charts are a little deceptive. Well, is that M? Yeah, it is M. That is a 6. Okay, well, I'm not sure I trust this, but we'll know in a minute when we try to point at it. I have a funny feeling the roof, my roll-off roof, may be actually in the way of this, but it could be close. This is a target I definitely want to go back to. Let's see. Yeah, that's not looking promising. It did pick up some stars. I promise next time I get on, I'll actually have a more comprehensive list of things to look at. Well, interesting. Let's see what we get from this. I'm still not hopeful. Alright, let's hit the auto histogram. Oh, well, I can see. Yeah, we're getting definitely a lot of light. This reddish area is all from that light that's out there. But let's take a shot at it anyway. This will be the last target for tonight. And we'll see what we get. You can definitely see all this reddish is partially caused by, I think, a little bit of the roll-off roof. I may end up getting a pure extension so I can actually get above my roof. There's two ways you can go with it. There's one that's all push button and you can add to your pier and it will actually bring the telescope up and down like a periscope. The other one is just a add-on for the mount that the gentleman that I got the mount from, not the mount, the pier from makes. I'm going to contact him. I'm not sure though I'll have enough room to bring the telescope down again if I put that add-on on the pier, so I have to measure it really carefully. I would like to get a little bit above that roof in that area of the sky. I would love to call the city and ask them if they could put a dim on that light or bring it down a little bit or a shade on it or something. But I have a feeling my cause would be not heard. I don't think the city realizes that the brighter the lights are, actually the higher the crime rate is, and makes it harder to detect criminals. You'd think it would be the opposite, but studies have proven absolutely the opposite. It's like, if you have a really expensive stereo in your car and you leave your car light, interior light on all night, well, someone looks in your car and sees, a Harman Kardon stereo or something valuable in there, or even change, they're more likely to break into your car. So if you light the area up, you're just inviting trouble. And our street lights are actually not very good. And they keep building developments all around me here in North Brampton, and it's getting brighter all the time. And the lights they're putting in are not the best, although I think some of them are not LED. LED light is a disaster for astrophotography and astronomy in general, or even just looking at the night sky. I see that light pollution creeping now from all sides. It used to be just from Mississauga. My house blocked out a lot of it, as it sort of sits to the southeast of me, Mississauga. But now I see that the light pollution come closer and closer over the top of the house. Okay, let's see what we got here. I'm not expecting much for this image, even though it is one frame. Well, better than I thought, but you can see again the outline. I think this mosquito. This is the outline of my roof, but it's also very bright in here. This brighter than it normally would be because of light pollution. Let's try to bring the histogram down a bit. It's not so great, but if you recognize this, excuse me, M16 is an image that if it were flipped kind of the other way around, a lot of you would recognize. This is the Eagle Nebula, and this is one of the biggest spectacular Hubble images ever taken. You've seen it before. If you have any interest in the night sky astronomy, you'd be familiar with the term pillars of creation. Well, this is it. Again, this is one frame where you got all kinds of light pollution going. We got the roof of the house going. It's very low in the sky right now. But hey, for one 3-minute frame, it's not bad. This will be higher in the sky in the winter time again, I'm hoping, and certainly early in the spring. So I do want to go back to this. I did start on it, but I started very late on it, and now I'm kind of in the position where it's just way too low for me to get any kind of decent image of it. Oops. Let's get in there again. There we go. So you can see this is part of the pillars, and this one they jokingly say is the dog jumping on its master. Again, you're looking at it kind of upside down here. But you can see again some of the structure and some of the other pillars are just starting to show through here. So again, if you were to kind of flip that picture around, it would look pretty familiar to you. This is strictly at H alpha. This would be one that I would color, obviously, in the Hubble palette, and to more show what, comparatively to the Hubble telescope image. Obviously, the Hubble image would be far, far superior to mine, but it's a amazing structure to look at. And this is basically an area where stars are made. They did do a infrared kind of shot where they could see into that gas a little bit, and you could see stars literally being made. All this, yeah, did I get them? Yeah, mosquito. This is a star birth area. This is where stars are made, and eventually this nebula will disappear. The stars actually get expelled from it at some point, and likely our own sun came from a nebula probably not too different than what you're seeing here. It was likely created in a nebula. Well, it was created in a nebula, and pretty spectacular stuff to look at. So there you have it, the Eagle Nebula, Pillars of Creation, and that's an aptly named for that because literally stars are being made in there, new stars. Eventually, however, all of this gas and dust that basically gets pulled and compressed by gravity will eventually be all used up. There'll be no more stars created in our galaxy, and at that point our galaxy will start to wink out star by star by star. As a matter of fact, right now we're looking back in time as this was many, 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 many years ago. Oops, wrong one. So if you're looking for distance on this one, it is, where are we? So we're up here, M16 does give us a distance, probably not on this. Nope. So yeah, pretty amazing stuff. M16, thought I'd finish out with a bang, so to speak. And I've definitely been on longer than I planned, but yeah, it was great. Hopefully, I know it was unplanned, so nobody would even was probably awake or got notification or happened to be on YouTube at the time. But if you're watching this video later on, I would appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, and have them subscribe. It would be a big help to me. And just hit notifications so then you know exactly when I am on live. And we're going to try again to do as much of this as I possibly can. And thank you for tuning in. It's always great to see people actually watching the videos, even though they likely don't get to watch the live stuff because I am not very good at pre-announcing that I'm going to be on. As a matter of fact, like I say, I didn't plan even on imaging tonight because I thought it was going to be cloudy. It was actually quite cloudy earlier in the evening, and I thought tonight would pretty much be a write-off. However, it worked out for the best. I got to come on and do this video, and I apologize for the noisy bit in the front. I did have to change my audio source for audio input. I'm not sure why it changed in the first place. I did have it set before, and hopefully the volume problem that I had before for the audio output has been fixed. and you'll be able to hear it. If not, you'll probably have to turn up your volume a bit. But hopefully not. Hopefully that's been fixed. I'll know shortly when I look at this video afterwards. Anyway, thank you again, everyone. It's great. Keep looking up at the sky. And if you have any questions about what I'm doing or anything astronomy that I can help you with, or even if you're looking to get started and you're looking for some direction, definitely feel free to message me on the Brampton Observatory Facebook page, and I will get back to you, I promise. Have a great night. Like I said, keep looking up, and if you ever get a chance to go out to a dark sky site, I highly recommend it. There's a big astrophotography event or astro event going on right now called Starfest. It's up in Mount Forest here in Ontario. Unfortunately, I am not able to get there this year, or it will be going on next week, I should say. It hasn't started yet. Not sure what the weather's going to be like, but excuse me again. If you do get a chance to get out there and go to the what we call a star party, they do have camping and all kinds of great astronomers there, but I do recommend going to the Starfest 22 webpage just so you see all the protocols about how to behave and what to do and what not to do, more importantly, when you are at one of these events or any kind of star party. Like bright white lights and things like that are absolute no-nos. But there's always some great people around, and if you have an interest in that, then in astronomy or visual, whether it be visual or astrophotography, there's going to be lots of vendors there and lots of really friendly, knowledgeable people. Good night, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.